Today I'm reading from a publication called Keepers at Home. The name of the story is Things That Matter by Liz King. I gave the pumpkin custard a final stir and tasted it once again. Satisfied, I carried it out to the porch to cool before glancing over the table once more. China dishes, a gift from Reuben on our wedding day, heart-shaped jello as an appetizer, and even the butter had a fancy design. Hot cider in steaming mugs flavored the ice cubes swimming in the tall glasses. Everything was perfect. I stirred the French fries and checked the sticky buns in the oven. Now I still needed to cut the pie and finish the salad. As I worked, I smiled in anticipation. Today was a special day. The sun shone brightly and the breeze smelled of spring and fresh dirt, just as they had that April day 5 years ago when I stepped from girlhood to womanhood. 5 years, a short time, yet long at the same time, I mused. Now, I could not imagine life without Reuben by my side. Love was truly a beautiful thing, and these had been good years. I took in the table again, set for two, and felt that familiar yearning. Why did it have to be this way? It seemed, when I thought back over the years, our main struggles had been linked to one word: infertility. 5 years ago, that had been merely a word. Now it meant many things: doctors, blood tests, pills, tears, disappointment, giving up our own desires again and again. And after the storm had abated, once more drying our tears and moving on. Was it not just this morning that I had prayed again, the tears choking my voice? God, you know the emptiness, our aching arms, but if raising a family is not your will for us, can you give us fulfillment elsewhere? It was not that God had not opened other doors. I loved my job at the local greenhouse. I loved to sew garments for my neighbor friends' growing family. I loved to help my sisters, not to mention babysitting. Yes, we've been blessed, beyond what we deserve, I thought firmly. And besides, if I had my arms full of little ones, I might not have been able to make the time to make this special meal like this. A slam of a car door interrupted my thoughts. Soon, the door opened and a gust of balmy spring air accompanied Reuben into the kitchen, but the smile on my lips died as I saw the look on his face. Something was wrong. Suddenly, I just knew it involved someone near and dear to us. Reuben, what's wrong? My voice was a whisper. Reuben sank into his chair. I had a phone call from my brother Ivan just before I started for home, he said. Ivan said he had been notified that David and Mary's little Jason was killed today in a farm accident. I sat down, too stunned to do anything else. David and Mary are friends who had been married only weeks after us. We had been close for years, although we now lived 25 miles apart. Our lives had gone in separate directions, too. With Mary being the mother of 3 little boys, I pictured Jason as he looked the last time we'd been together, curly haired and blue eyed, fairly bursting with life and mischief, and now he was gone. Do you have any details? I asked when I found my voice. Reuben shook his head. No, not except that it was a farm accident. He went to wash his hands while I dished out the food with hands that trembled. Our appetites were gone. The very special anniversary supper was dry and tasteless. As we tried to imagine the trauma our friends were going through, we had just finished eating when one of David's neighbors came to tell us the tragic news. I'm notifying you that the funeral will be on Wednesday, he said. When we asked for details, he said that Jason had apparently slipped away from his brothers and crawled under a wagon load of hay that was waiting to be hauled to the barn. Not knowing he was there, David sent his hired man to fetch the hay with a team of horses. Jason had been killed instantly when those heavy steel wheels went over him. The day of the funeral dawned, gray and wet, with a damp wind and light mist falling. The weather matched our moods, I mused, as I joined the large group of mourners filing into the large shed where the funeral was to be held, near the front of the small brown coffin. With the bereft family sitting just behind, I blinked back tears. I thought of that white, still face that we had viewed the day before. How different from the robust, active little boy of just a few days ago. Jason had very few bruise marks, and with most of his injuries being internal, he looked as though he was merely sleeping. I thought of the viewing. I had sat behind Mary for a few minutes, but had felt at a complete loss. I had never experienced being a mother, much less being asked to give one of my children back to God. I let my thoughts wander in the heavy silence as we waited for the funeral service to begin. As if it had been yesterday, I remembered the day that my friend Mary had become a mother. Distinctly, I remembered my reaction and the hot tears that had fallen on the blue birth announcement. It had felt as though she were entering a new, exciting chapter in life, and I was left behind. 2 years later, there had been another blue card in the mail, another boy named Jason. The pain dulled as I strove to find my niche elsewhere. I knew that Mary had her struggles too, but oh, how it filled my heart with longings when she came not long afterward with two little boys in tow, small miniatures of David. Unbidden, a verse that had haunted me before now popped into my mind. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved. After all, David and Mary had two little boys left. Maybe they would have large families someday, and they had memories of Jason everywhere and had a family started in heaven. They would have a plot in the graveyard as an outlet for their grief, while our graveyard of dashed hopes remained unseen. I was ashamed to be thinking those bitter thoughts, but still they continued. In the days to come, David and Mary would be showered with gifts of food and scrapbook sheets. There would be visitors and stacks of sympathy cards. Meanwhile, we would go home again, tonight, to our empty house. Our lives would go on. Our struggles and disappointments lay largely unnoticed. My throat burned, and hot tears threatened to overflow. Hopefully, the people around me would think I was crying for our friends instead of over my own heartaches. I jerked my thoughts back to the present as the minister stood up and began to speak, yet I found it difficult to concentrate. Why was it so hard? Why could I not forget myself in the face of this tragedy? We are gathered here today in a way that we had not planned, the minister said, and I forced myself to concentrate. This little boy growing up in our midst has taken his last breath here on earth. He paused to steady his voice. It's a loud call for all of us. Little Jason has taken the step that we will all make someday. We are once again reminded that we're not promised tomorrow. This is a time for all of us to examine ourselves, our own lives. What is our focus? Is it the latest fashion, keeping up with the neighbors, or having everything nice as possible on this earth? I sat up straighter. This man was saying things that I needed to hear. I was not overly concerned about dress styles, and our money thus far had always reached around, but I was wishing for something that most of my friends had. The minister was going on. The Bible says that to God 1,000 years are likened to a day. If that is how it is, our lifespan is very short indeed, and that tiny span will determine where we spend eternity. It is high time for us to remove our focus from the all consuming cares of this earth. In 100 years, the treasures that you have stored up on this earth will mean nothing, nor will money or fame or popularity. What will matter is our attitudes, our goals, and the way that we respond to life's disappointments. My friends, as he continued with emphasis, if we allow the trials of this life to mold us, to shape us, and make us into the people he wants us to be, then I truly believe the rest will fall into place. The minister moved on to other subjects, but my mind was busy as I digested his words. Once again, I was reminded of how short and fleeting our time here actually was. What did it matter that I sometimes felt neglected and forgotten? What did it matter in our grief? What did it matter if our grief was a hidden thing? In 100 years, will it matter? However, there will be other things that did matter, and my face flushed in shame as I realized how selfish my thoughts had been. There were aching hearts all around me, not because of the recent death, but because everyone had a burden to carry. There were widows and widowers. There were parents of wayward children. There were those who struggled financially. There were parents swamped with work and cares, and only in forgetting myself could I reach out to be a blessing to others. The second minister was preaching now. In a voice shaky with old age, he related his experience. He too had lost a child years ago in a buggy accident. His tears flowed as I listened. This time, they were tears for David and Mary, for the huge aching void in their home and family. Once I laid myself aside, I realized what they were facing in the days ahead. After today, the people around them will go on with their lives, but that for them, life would never be the same again. Even if there were more boys in the family someday, they would never be another Jason. The service was coming to a close. One more glance at that peaceful, waxen face, then the lids of the coffin were closed, and it was carried out for burial in the adjoining cemetery. Soon we were on our way back home, back to another chance at life. Today I was not mulling over the fact that we were once again coming home to an empty house. Instead, I was thinking of the brevity of life and of how short and fleeting these earthly cares actually are. What did it matter that people loved and lost a child? Some people never had the chance to love, and others loved and did not lose. There were pilgrims and strangers all passing through this brief span of life, but however brief, it will determine our eternal destiny. And in 100 years, that's all that will matter. Thank you for joining us today at the Simple Storyteller and listening to our story. Thank you.